Hello, friends. Welcome to Eat Sleep Code. It's the official Telerik podcast. It's the news podcast. It's the tech show. It's the Ed and John
it's the
Bristowe
README
show.
file. Yeah, it's the README file for everything that has to do with development.
A speech or a text to speech program could replace us both any day, John.
I hope so. It's better than listening to my voice, that's for sure.
I think I've actually seen this on some websites now, and I can't remember which one. Now that I'm thinking of it, I wish I would have bookmarked it, but it basically has a button that you press and it will read the article to you.
Oh yeah.
So you don't have to read it yourself, but hey, why not?
Well, they could use we mentioned this before, but they could use that AI algorithm, GPT-3, to auto-generate these shows now. So I don't know if it would make sense, but there you go.
Hey man, you got the pipes. You should do that for some extra coin on the side. Just go, I'll read your page out loud for, $50.
Yeah,
Just do that.
we see that with a few celebrities these days. They'll pay you some money. You pay them a bit of money, and they'll do a cameo 1-minute video like, "Hey Ed, I hear it's your birthday. This is from your buddy Mike. He wants to wish you the, got Macho Man Randy Savage and these old actors from yesteryear doing these promos. It's pretty sad, but whatever. So
If you can get Macho Man to read a promo for me, I will pay you big dollars because that's going to take some engineering talent to resurrect him from the dead, my friend.
Okay.
Rest in peace, Mr. Savage.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I haven't watched wrestling forever, so I'm a kid of the '80s. So.
There's actually a really excellent show here in the States. I don't know if it's shown everywhere or not at this point, but it's I can't remember what channel it's airing on, but it's The Rock, and he's doing a show about his childhood. Yeah. Fantastic show, man. If you grew up in the 80s, like, it's all just throwbacks to the 80s, the entire show, and it's like it's real things taken from his life and like turned into television. It's excellent. It is so good.
Just on that note, I find that the kids of the '80s are particularly nostalgic. It's not like the nostalgia you see from the people of the '60s, right, or the '70s. Kids of the '80s, they like cheese. Like, I mean, fromage, stinky blue cheese nostalgia. Like the worst of the worst. That's the nostalgia we have. Like, oh, dude, remember when they came out with this? Oh yeah, like it was so bad. Like, we have that cynical, I hate everything in the world, Generation X type nostalgia. Whereas the people of the '60s are like, it was a great time, man. '70s were like, it was free, everything was laid back, and we're like, yeah, everything sucked.
We laid the bedrock for things like Facebook. So I remember like texting my daughter something like before like emojis are built into the phone, like you have to make them out of like semicolons and stuff, and I texted her
emoticon.
like a smiley face with the emoticon. Yeah. She's like, how do you know that? I'm like, dude, we invented this stuff. What are you talking about? Like, we were sending each other this on.
See it.
Like, we carved these into stone tablets before you had computers.
That's right, like Moses from the mountaintop.
All right. So in building things in our stone tablets, we use Visual Studio Code for that type of thing, right? So I've kind of grouped these into like Visual Studio, Microsoft, GitHub. We've got like a very Microsofty heavy start
sorry
to this
about
thing.
That.
It's me too.
Most of
I took a little spring break last week, and I haven't been up on news, so I just turned to what I know. And just so happens those guys are shipping bits like every 5 minutes.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
So, John, you've got some Visual Studio Code updates for us?
Yeah, in the classic sense of always shipping, and Microsoft's always busy with Visual Studio Code. This is the ship vehicle du jour. They posted some updates, new icons now, so that's great if you're on a Mac, and some minor improvements here and there. I love it whenever a new update comes down, so I'm always grabbing it. They've got a few nice improvements. Nothing that's going to majorly change the way you actually program, but these are niceties that keep getting added in. And the thing about Visual Studio Code itself is that it's so extensible. I mean, there's more and more extensions being added every day. I mean, this is my IDE du jour, and I love it. I use it all the time. So, I mean, I have been tempted by others, but nothing comes close to code. I've got code running all the time.
So this is one of those accessibility things that you never think of as a person that doesn't need the visual aids and things. Multi-cursor support. So they added to their screen reader queues for when a cursor, an additional cursor or line column position is added and removed. It's like those are the things you just don't think of unless you need those things. So I think that's really cool to just read through some of these accessibility improvements once in a while to kind of pick up on some of the challenges they're overcoming with the VS team, and adding these features that people with accessibility needs want. That's really cool. I never would have thought of that. Just add it, announcing when those cursors are added so you can use the multi-cursor feature in Visual Studio.
Yeah. The one that I'm hoping at some point comes along is better multi-monitor support. In particular, when you've got so many, like Visual Studio Code's great because it has built-in sort of columns that you can add, etc. in your editor. But what I would like to see is where I can take an output window or something like that and drag it, like kind of like what Visual Studio supports, drag it over to another monitor so that window is my dedicated output window, or that window is my dedicated debugging tool, for example. That would be better, I think. That could be improved.
Yeah.
But yeah, just niceties here. So just a minor update, easy to do. So go ahead and update your bits, and away you go.
Enhanced light theme.
Yeah.
We've got some themes marked down in here too.
Yes, that's right.
This is something Visual Studio proper keeps trying to do and stumbling upon. Because it's not based off of web technology, I think is part of the issue. It's not as easy to style.
Yeah, that's true.
With Visual Studio Code, it is web-based. I believe you can pull up DevTools and actually inspect elements and stuff like that.
Yep. It's the code editor is called Monaco, and it's driven all through basically a web experience.
So there's no discovery tool in Visual Studio proper for say like a dialog box comes up. There's no way to find out like what that theme element is called.
You could through a tool called Spy. Spy is an old tool in Windows that you could use to inspect various values of Windows, the IME values, and a variety of this is an old premise back in Windows days, but you could inspect certain. But you're right, you didn't have sort of stock standard tools to inspect values that you do in, say, browsers, for example. So this is a website
it's
that
incredibly
allows
hard.
So this is a website that for a variety of reasons you may want to choose, like, for example, that nice green environment. That's a solid
Hulk-like theme.
Theme
good, Hulk-like theme.
Yeah, exactly. This is more like 1980s, circa 1980s terminal window. So yeah, if you're looking for a community theme, this is a place to go. There are many places, obviously. Some of these are built in, obviously, with VS, but these are ones that you may discover may align better to your aesthetic taste, per se.
Yeah, this is great. This is a real big list here. It's like infinite scrolling and everything.
The thing that's interesting about people's taste is that the more esoteric people get, I can imagine someone who lives in VS all the time, they do everything in VS. Mm-hmm. They start to develop very interesting tastes. You see this in people's houses when they acquire a little bit of money. They get these really interesting tastes associated with their decor and such. So I can imagine some people would I want to try and use a really weird environment look and feel. So
this one is called Hugo's First Try by Hugo.
I guess. Yeah.
Aptly
Good job,
named.
Hugo. There you go.
Good job, Hugo. You made it on the show, my friend.
That's right. So yeah. So there's a place to go to customize your VS environment, VS Code environment.
So you can actually create the theme on here, which is pretty wild. Like that's what I said. Like doing this in Visual Studio, there is a tool that you can install in Visual Studio proper for this.
Sure.
And it's about as simple as what we're doing here and hit create
Yeah.
theme. It's when you get into the weeds though, and you run into something that's not themed and you need to fix it when it goes all awry and hits the fan.
Yeah, it's like, do you like white or dark meat for your turkey? It's the same kind of premise. So it would be kind of cool if there was a flexibility to themes themselves relative to your daytime settings. Like I know that Mac has this built in, Windows I think has this built in as well, where at a certain hour it will kind of dim the environment. It would be cool if you could have an additional theme, like you have the theme here, which is permeated, but there could be like a nighttime theme that automatically gets picked up if a certain hour passes by, for example.
Yeah, Twitter will flip your themes from light to dark at nighttime.
Yeah.
The Android app does, at least. I don't know if it's something I enabled or what, but after about 7 o'clock at night, it goes dark theme, and then about 7 a.m. it goes light theme.
Yep.
But yeah, that would be kind of cool. I'm sure you could write a VS plugin to do it. A VS Code plugin, anyway.
Yes.
Maybe not a VS plugin, not without 17 projects and the Roslyn, what's it called, code generators. But for VS Code, it'd probably be a couple lines of JavaScript.
There you go.
So you heard it here. If you got the idea, you heard it here. At least give John some credit.
This is not a new idea. It's an old idea.
While we're on the topic of like Visual Studio and Microsoft and all that good stuff, I wanted to kind of share this again. This is Sam Basu. I talked about this a couple weeks ago. He's doing a series on Maui, which is the new multi-platform UI from Microsoft that's shipping in .NET 6. Yep. And he's giving his like full rundown of all the ins and outs of learning about Maui and what you need as far as like hardware and stuff. He's talking about the M1 and installing the utilities and stuff that you'll need for that. And this is just part 3, and he's just going through all the stuff. This is really great content from Sam. So make sure you check that out at blogs.telerik.com.
Yeah, I would say .NET 6 is looking to be because it's a multiple of 3. It's always the way with Microsoft. The one you want to install from anything regarding Microsoft is always the multiple of 3 version. And so in classic tradition, Microsoft is following that premise. And it looks like .NET 6, based on the feature set that I've seen and the stuff that's getting integrated, looks to be the version you're going to want to grab.
Yes. I can't say too much because I just literally ended the MVP summit this afternoon.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I won't. Don't, dude. You're gonna trip up. Don't do it. So.
All I can say
from what I've
is,
seen, it looks great.
I'll skip to this next story here, and say this is where you will learn about those things, the general public, and you will be very impressed with the .NET 6 stuff that's coming.
Awesome.
So make sure you tune in to Build. It's online, virtual again this year.
Yep.
So if anything good came out of the pandemic, I think the shift to virtual conferences is something that will stay. So I think in 2022, I'm making a total assumption here, but I think we'll have in-person conferences back. But I think they will still have a main track of virtual content.
Yes.
And I think that's awesome because of it lowers barriers to the industry. You don't have to be in the know to get a ticket or have money to get a ticket. Build conference tickets are expensive.
Yeah.
It's plus the travel if you're not already in the area to get wherever Build is at. You're talking, $3,000 at least to get in and out of that thing. So this is great for people that want to attend the content and do it virtually, and you still get some of the one-on-one interactions on chat rooms and things. It's really great stuff. So,
I think it's worth it given the exposure you get. If you think about it relative to other things you invest money in, this is an investment in yourself. I think, more than anything. And I've always said this. Whenever I go to a conference, if it's recorded, I never go to the sessions. I spend my entire time talking to product team members, PMs, managers. I'm trying to make as many points of contact that I can, so that after the fact, I can, follow up by email, or I can, I can always watch the sessions after the fact. It's not a big deal.
Yeah, and with the virtual stuff like this, you can do both. Just like you said, you can find these people that have sessions, and a lot of them they have live streams these days. Microsoft's done a lot with the Learn channel that they have, and their Twitch channel. So you can get in there and get interactive with these folks again, like you said, and have discussions with them kind of in a public forum. And a lot of people are on social media these days, and you can always follow up with them there. But I mean, at least it introduces you to these folks, where before, like I said, getting a ticket to build is not, an easy task for most people.
No.
So, but it's coming again in May, and hopefully we'll be back in person next year. But until then, watch for .NET 6 announcements and demos and all that good stuff. And there's going to be quite good content.
Bring it on, I
can just say. I've seen some of the things they're bringing, and they're bringing the heat. And Chad says that he's starting to see some conferences come back in person later this year. Or I'm not sure if, Chad, you mean you actually know of some that are scheduled in person, or do you have a feeling they're coming back in person? I have a feeling some of them might come back in person locally.
Yeah.
But I haven't seen any scheduled per se.
Well, it depends on vaccine rollouts and stuff, but I think the U.S. is going to open up relative to conferences sooner than we think. This is my prediction. 2022 is going to be the return of the Jedi, so to speak. So, yeah.
There we go. Tech Bash is scheduled Cincinnati in that conference. So that conference,
Awesome.
so Tech Bash and that conference both are Kalahari water parks. Those I'll reserve my opinions on. I think
Are those the hotels?
I don't want to torpedo
that have
anybody.
Is that the hotel that in the middle of the hotel has the tropical wonderland?
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
This is a classic 80s idea premise, maybe 70s. I'll give this to the 70s. The idea is that you can be magically whisked away to this tropical paradise, despite the fact that you're in the middle of, like, I'll use Canada because I like trashing Canada because I'm from there. You're in the magical tropical paradise, but despite the fact that you're in Winnipeg or Regina, and it's like January, and there's a buildup of snow up on the side of the window, you could be magically whisked away with your Mai Tai or Pina Colada. So. Yeah. I love those hotels. They're hilarious.
We've done this, I want to say 4 times, and 2 of those 4 times we've had blizzards while we're there.
Yeah,
and,
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like this dystopian, weird Buck Rogers / Logan's Run type environment where it's like, yeah, don't worry about what's going on outside. It feels like very much like WALL-E, where we've trashed the planet and there's this nice sort of environment you can live in. I don't know what that is, but it's kind of weird to me. So yeah, sorry, I'm getting off on a tangent here.
All right, we'll circle back to some unit testing. This was written by Microsoft MVP on our team, Rosie, and she did a fantastic job covering like all the newer C# features with unit testing and mocking.
Yep.
So this is a really good read if you're trying to catch up on some of the new C# terminology, things like pattern matching and how to solve those unit testing patterns with these new tools at your disposal.
So are they like fuzzing inputs and such? Is that what they're doing, or what are they doing here? Oh, okay. I see.
Async streams or something that's brand new
Yeah,
in C# 8. So she's covering kind of the new things.
Sorry, I misunderstood. I thought they were doing data gen for tests. That's what you would use typically for. There's generators out there. I think the ASP.NET Monsters built something like that. So
Yeah. Yeah. This is more, we have this new syntax. How do we apply that to things that we're testing? Or I've applied it to some class. How do I test that thing now that I've had
yep.
init-only setters added to this class? How do I test that the thing has been
Oh, I
set?
see what they're doing. I used to always have to use reflection to do this. I always felt like my pedantic brain would be like, I got to test this. Like my code coverage is at 99%. I need 100%. And so I would thunk down to reflection to actually call this private method just to test it, you know?
Yeah, so with JustMock, you can test private methods and
Yeah.
fields and those type of things because it has magic. It has magic in there and it does magic things.
You know, honestly, I bet you anything that underneath the covers they're doing the same thing. They're like, listen, we'll just wrap this thing. We'll call it a feature, you know?
Never looked at the source code for it, but I know it does some pretty advanced stuff, and it does it all with
cool.
a little bit of syntactic sugar on top.
All right.
So she's got a pattern matching example in here, how to assert something with pattern matching. It's all just very good samples. They're just boiled
All right.
down, made very simple to understand. Great read, once again, at
Sweet.
blogs@telerik.com. So the really advanced stuff here, John, we've got a
Yeah.
calculator from Microsoft.
Oh God, you
What
have
is
no
this,
idea
my
how,
friend?
you know. Yeah. So you know, for those of you using Windows, you know, you got the tried and true calculator app. Always a classic. Actually, this app is actually not too bad. My son has a Windows laptop for his school, and I've noticed that, you know, when I always bring up the calculator app because I'm a believer that, you know, once you get past grade 6 and 7, you really shouldn't you shouldn't have to write this stuff out. You should just use a calculator because you want to learn these higher premise concepts in mathematics and science. Anyways, there's lots of features to the calculator. And so anyways, you can take a look at the source code. It's up on GitHub. So Microsoft published it there. It's C++ mostly, but, you know, which some people would argue is a read-only language. But anyways, or write-only language, that's right, excuse me. A write-only language, sorry, that's
Yeah.
the joke, I forgot. Damn, I blew the punchline.
So this is the actual calculator that ships in Windows,
That's right,
by the way.
that's right. So yeah, you can take a look at it, submit PRs, submit issues, so good stuff.
Yeah, it's a good learning tool, I suppose. It's very cool.
I like to, like, what's interesting is when you become a parent, you start to, you know, meet other kids and such, like, you know, your nieces and nephews, they ask you for help, you know, for example, with math homework, for example. You start pointing them to tools like, hey, did you know the calculator does this and that? And then you start pointing them to more advanced stuff like Wolfram Alpha, which is a godsend. Like, I would have killed to have that when I was in high school because it does everything you want and more. And Wolfram Alpha is magic to me, how it can discern what it is you're actually, like, you got these goofballs typing in, you know, multivariable equations, and it can just, oh yeah, you're totally trying to do this, and it totally sniffs that out, and then it like figures what you're doing, and then it's like, yeah, here's the answer, and here's another way to think of it, and here's another way to think of it. That's a great tool if you're a high school student.
Yeah, I don't know if
get
we
the cheat code.
talked about it on this show or not, but I went to school for electronics.
Yep.
And we had a bunch of electronics calculations we were supposed to memorize, like
Sure.
you know, Ohm's law stuff, and
Sure. Yeah.
how to calculate, you know, resistance over an entire circuit and all that good nonsense. So
I used to remember sorry to interject. I used to remember the Unicode symbols when I would do like math in like processors, and you'd be like holding down the Alt key, and you'd be like Alt 128 or something like that to get the ohm symbol, which is that like, you know, so anyway.
So I had one of the TI-83 graphing calculators.
Hot.
And it had a VB programming language in it. So I wrote an app that basically had all the circuit calculations, and it would just walk through the parameters with you. So it'd be like, how many resistors are in the circuit? 12.
Yep.
Enter R1 through 12. You'd enter the values. Here's your total resistance for the circuit.
Yep.
There were like options in there for like adding a parallel track or a what do you call it? Series circuit or parallel circuit, and it would figure the whole thing out. And we'd have these tests that were supposed to take hours. They're like final exams, and it's like I would finish in 10 minutes
Sure, sure.
Like do the
Yep.
mic drop like here.
TI-80 programs are like our generation's punch cards, right?
Yeah.
You know, we try to describe this to people, and they're like, "No way." I'm like, "Yeah, way." You know, we used to totally do this. You know, my TI-80 was TRS-80 rather was so worn down. Like the cover was all, like the plastic was all smooth and worn down and everything, and yeah. Just crazy the stuff that you could do on them. So
Yeah, this is the high tech device here,
yep,
and you would have to enter code through these terrible. What is this stuff
Sure,
called again?
yeah.
Where you use the little number pads.
There's like
There's
function numbers. You hold down Alt and Shift, and it would that's how you
Yeah.
type basically. So
It was ridiculously hard to type anything on this. It's like those old cell phones that had like the 8-button
Sure.
like, typing. So I made a bridge for my PC out of a serial cable that was spliced with like a headphone jack cable on the end because this thing had a headphone jack for I/O.
yeah,
And then I wrote a desktop app to do file transfer, so I could use Notepad to write my apps for
hot.
cheating on my tests. And it was probably at that point I realized that this was a waste of my money taking these courses. I think I jumped the shark on that one. So anyhow,
Yeah,
those were the good old days.
This thing was so tough as well. It was like the Nokia 3300. It was you could drop this from 10 feet and it would just keep ticking. You know.
Oh yeah, you'd leave it in the car in like 100-degree
it'd heat
weather.
it up. All the
and
plastic would get soft.
The screen would turn just like jet black, but you'd
Yep.
take it inside, and once it cooled off, it worked no problem.
Yeah, it was fine. Just kept going. You know,
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure TI or Texas Instruments, developed space circuitry as well to withstand radiation.
So this was a cool blog series. We like totally got off track here. We
Sorry.
get back on.
What else is new? This is all this show is just going off on these like weird tangents, you know.
I know. So Microsoft bought GitHub ages ago, so this is still technically Microsoft content. They released a new like Git homepage not that long ago, GitHub homepage.
Sure.
It had this really cool like globe like effect to it, and I think it shows some kind of real time data points and stuff in it. So there's a really good blog post series here on how they built the globe that's on their homepage.
Yeah.
And it goes through 5 articles on like every detail. It's really cool.
Yeah. Yeah. This falls in the rich tradition of when Apple does something on their website, people on Hacker News inevitably break it down and try and figure out how they built it. So this is the same sort of idea.
Yeah, and this comes from within, so they've got some inside baseball here. I like this number 4, I think it was, that shows you their design, like
Mock-ups. and
storyboards and mock-ups and some of the other iterations they've gone through when they were coming up with this idea. And I thought it was really cool that people see the design work that goes into these things, because I don't think that's shared often enough.
No.
And not every developer is a designer, and I think a lot of us know that, but just I don't think a lot of us get to see the process because of that.
No, and you know what? We get the credit for it as developers. I more and more I have to take my hat off to designers. For a long time, I used to look at design as like, Apple would always be touting design. Like I'd be rolling my eyes. I'm like, you guys don't get it. None of this would be possible if we didn't enable this. And now that script inside my head has flipped, where I'm like, no, design actually really does matter. And it's amazing what designers do to make us look good. And the reality is that all the infrastructure and all the building blocks for drawing or for knowing that a check-in just happened or whatever is already there, or you just have to surface it out through an API call. And coming up with this clever way of visualizing it and then doing all the aesthetics around it, that's the high order bit that makes it connect with people emotionally. And so this is the part that I think people don't give credit for. too often. And I was one of those people for the longest time. I was one of those people where I was like, this really just noise. There's very low signal in this stuff. But the reality is if you've got a high signal rate and it doesn't connect emotionally with people, no one's going to go and check it out. So you got to remember that the people who are viewing this are humans, and they want to connect with it emotionally. So,
yeah, what's really neat is they took, as I scrolled through this, you might have seen like some of these really cool illustrations. They've taken these and released them as wallpapers, which I think is really neat. So they've got them for like even the biggest like ultra wide monitors.
Oh, nice.
So you can just grab those and download them and put them on your machine. I mean, that's just really cool graphics.
Yeah.
Like that. That's an awesome background. So that's on the GitHub blog, and it suggests you give those a read all the way through. There's lots of cool stuff in all of these about the whole process behind it and coding.
Sorry,
it up
another
and
80s reference. It just
and all
reminds me of like nuclear war, where you see all the, because like we grew up with the prospect
yeah, it
of
looks
nuclear
like
war. Sorry, this is a really
the
bad
movie.
It
It looks like that movie, right?
Yeah. It's like war games where it's like, you know.
Would you like to play a game?
Yeah, I know. Sorry, it sounds really bad. Everyone's shooting missiles at each other, but yeah.
I'm sure that's not the intent they wanted to give.
No, I'm sorry, but I'm like, I'm a kid of the 80s. This is like, I grew up with the terror of nuclear war. The Cold War was at its height, I think, in the 80s. And this is all I thought about. Need the cheesy
vector circles just growing out. Boom, 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 boom.
Yep. Sorry.
Yeah, we used to play
terrible
Scorched Earth, the little tank game. That was like the big.
Yeah.
That was the big deal in my computer classes in high school. Was Scorched Earth.
Yeah. I know. I love how back in the day we came out with the horrors of nuclear war were basically whittled down to these like childhood type games that people would install and play. Like, dude, I just nuked like Moscow or something like.
We still do this. I mean, Grand Theft Auto is like.
Oh sure, yeah.
The open world of just gang heists.
I know. Embarrassing.
GitHub Desktop now supports cherry picking.
Yeah, so a lot of people, Git can be done in a number of ways. Obviously, the canonical way is through, obviously, the CLI. But desktop is sort of the visual way of doing that. And so GitHub Desktop's been around for a while. This thing gets updated probably as much as Visual Studio Code. There's always updates for it. I actually like this tool. There's other ones, Git Kraken, etc. There's Kraken, but there's tons of tools out there to visualize these sorts of things. And so now desktop supports the notion of cherry picking, which is basically taking these sorts of the check-ins and such that you want to commit to branches, etc. You can now do that. And so this was a long-standing feature that was missing for a while. So this is something now that you can do within desktop. So good stuff there.
Yeah, I remember using this when it used to be two separate tools. I can't remember what the original one was called, but it was like the first Metro themed, like back when they were using that terminology. It was like Metro Git or something. I don't remember what it was.
Yeah, there's been a few iterations of this.
Yeah. They called it like Git Desktop after that, then merged it with the multi-platform idea.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Good stuff though.
Mm-hmm.
Not good stuff.
No.
533 million Facebook users' phone numbers leaked on a hacker forum.
Yeah, I'm
going to go out on a limb and say mine's like probably out there anyway. I get so much spam on my phone, it's ridiculous.
Yeah. I think the thing that people jumped all over, forget the 533 million people. The thing that people really jumped on, the newsworthy tidbit here was that apparently Mark Zuckerberg's phone number was in this data breach. That's what people jumped all over. I'm like, God, who cares? But, this is a reported breach. This has been integrated into Have I Been Pwned, which is Troy Hunt's site for looking up credential and PII information breaches. So, just yet another thing that happened, but use Have I Been Pwned. Great site to see if you've got any concerns about your personal information being compromised in some way. It's integrated in a lot of tools now. A lot of governments are utilizing it. Sorry, I know this is kind of a pitch for Have I Been Pwned, but Troy's a friend, so but yeah, this is just yet another example of of information that gets out, unfortunately. So this unfortunately does happen quite a bit. A lot of I would suspect a large portion of it we never hear about. So yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd be as concerned about my phone number as other information, but
the problem is not so much the people. Like, people think, oh, who's going to call me? I'll just hang up on them. But the problem is that when you've got all these sort of disparate points of data floating around the internet that you can grab onto, now you can become quite a compromised target, because a lot of other companies, unfortunately, rely upon that as a way of validating your identity. So birthdays, phone numbers, wife's maiden name, these are questions that often come up in password resets, for example. So it's more telemetry on potential targets, I think, and that's the concern, is that people can be, if you're, for the general person, like I talk to friends and family about this, and they ask me, like, should I be concerned? Like, generally speaking, no. You're not I'm sorry to say, you're not an interesting person enough to target, right? So, Mary Jane or Joe Smith, they're not an interesting target to a person who's out there. They're going to cast people who are trying to compromise systems and people, and take identity. They're trying to cast a wide net as possible, trying to catch as many fish as they can. And so they're not going to attack you as an individual, you personally, Joe or Jane, for example, or Alice, unless, it's someone who you personally know, I think, generally, or you get, unfortunately, stuck into a net. But it is more data that can compromise systems, and they can be utilized in, say, social engineering exploits. Like, you call up a bank and they ask you, please verify your phone number, your address, etc. There's a good point made in the chat room. Marcus, voice programmer, does say that it does make two-factor authentication a risk, which is true, because oftentimes an SMS message is sent to verify a code. So I guess more telemetry that can help compromise a person. So, there are apps that you have to install, verify through QR codes, etc. There are ways to get around this. Not as an exploit, but rather to mitigate these risks. But generally speaking, these aren't good things. You don't want this information out there. I understand why people would be like, who cares? But, yeah.
So speaking of phones, John, you won't have your LG phone number leaked anywhere, because
right.
After
Perfect.
a decade of failure, it says the Ars Technica headline. This Ars Technica headline is brutal. You won't be missed, it says. Yeah. After a decade of failure, the LG officially quits the smartphone market after 23 consecutive money-losing quarters.
Yeah.
Just rub that salt in the wound there.
Sure. I mean, how many phone divisions have you launched, Ars Technica? How many, this is hard stuff. These guys are trying their best. Now, obviously, that phone is kind of weird. But anyways, I think that, I try not, as much as I like to trash companies from time to time, I think hardware and software is hard, especially the combination. I think, good on them for making a stab at it. Unfortunately, it didn't work out. I think that, we're seeing innovation and simplicity is the rule of law, or winning out the game. You're seeing a return to basic design with Apple, for example, integrated experiences. I think libraries matter a great deal as well. App stores matter. The ecosystem matters a great deal. And I think when you're a commoditized player, like in the case of Android, it's very difficult to be a differentiator. And you're seeing this with these pop-out phones and stuff. People are trying to become different that way, and it's just not a mass scale approach, I think, that's going to win the market. I think you've got to own all aspects of the market, but I've never done this, so I don't know, but that's just me speculating. But
yeah, that seems to be the winning strategy anyway.
Yeah, I mean, LG should stick to washers and dryers and fridges. They do a great job there. I've got an LG washer and dryer. I love it.
I've got an LG fridge. It's great.
Phones, not so sure. It's hard. It's a hard market.
So here's my 2 cents. I don't know how great of a company they were. I have good luck with phones, ironically.
Okay.
Like, maybe I don't use them hard enough. Maybe I don't beat my phones up enough. But every phone I've owned has lasted at least 3 years or more.
Yep.
And from conversations I have with most people, that is not the going great at things.
My phone is starting to look like it had a starring role in a Mad Max movie. You know, like I've dropped this thing so many times. I have an iPhone, and I don't have a case for it, and I think it's a great device. It's tough as nails, and I've dropped it so many times, and I've replaced parts. I have an iFixit sort of kit and stuff, and I've replaced parts on different phones, and haven't had a problem. Now, I think part of that is you're developing the discipline of holding the phone carefully, and you're not dismissive when you hold the phone. And it's like holding something that's delicate, like a fine piece of china. And I'm not like carrying it around on a pillow or anything, but I think if you develop the mental discipline of whenever I have this in my hand, I got to make sure I'm not spinning it around or anything. But yeah, I don't have a case.
Yeah, I've only broken one my whole life. And
what's great about that is when they break, they look they're fantastically broken. Oh. Like the screen, it looks like it went through a car accident. Like they look destroyed. It's hilarious.
If you're gonna break a phone, you have to do it right. You have to do it in just epic splendor, sure. like just total extravagance. And what I did was perfectly just that. I'm talking to my wife. I've got my backpack on, and the strap slips down my arm and catches my forearm, and football spikes the phone into the tile floor in the middle of a Hyatt. And it just shattered into a million pieces in the lobby.
Right in the lobby?
Yeah, right in the lobby. Because I mean, you know, Devrel backpack, and you've got the 6 laptops and tablet and maybe the paperback book you read on the plane, whatever's in there, last night's clothes, and it weighs like 2 tons, and that thing just come down on my wrist, and it was like pow, right on the ground. And it
Touchdown.
It shattered, and I mean, it was just pieces everywhere. And, there's not much you can do after that. And that was a Windows phone, so it was a Nokia phone. And you know how tough those things are.
Yeah.
That thing exploded like a bomb.
Yeah.
And I picked it up, and she was still on the line.
Yeah.
Like, no kidding, the screen was just obliterated.
What
and
the heck
I'm
was
like,
that?
Yeah, she's like, what happened? I'm like, I just broke my phone. I think I better go. And I couldn't figure out how to hang it up.
People give you the slow clap in the lobby, you know?
Yeah. I remember not being able to hang it up because it's like the glass is gone, and you're like, what finger do I cut off trying to shut this thing down?
Yeah, it's like we say in ice hockey, if you're going to take a penalty, take a good one. Like, if you're going to get a high sticking penalty, you might as well just chop his head off.
Go down in flames.
The fact that you spiked it is
glorious.
Great. Yeah. Yeah, nothing is worse than being like, oops, and like it falls like 2 feet, and you're like, come on, really? Like it broke from that? So, anyway.
Yeah, I'm sure there were some small children in the room that learned some new words when that happened.
Sure. Well,
they've heard worse
too bad
at school.
LG, but too bad LG, but that's the way it goes, I guess. So
yeah.
Keep making dryers, though. I love your dryers.
I was gonna say I had an LG phone, and that was one of the ones that lived a very long life. By the way. It was this one that they were making fun of right here. They're like, why is it curved?
This is kind of weird. Like, I can understand, like, you want it to curve to your face, but I don't know.
Yeah. I think the mistake here was, like, everybody's face is not the same size, and it was, like, not curved the right direction. It was weird. But, it didn't go in your pocket very easy because it was curved. No. It was an odd device, but it worked well. It had a good UI and everything, so.
I suppose.
What the heck?
Yeah.
Supreme Court backs Google in copyright fight with Oracle.
Yeah, so this involves about 11,000 lines of Java code. This is a long-standing dispute between Google and Oracle that recently got kind of settled in the Supreme Court. Basically, what Google was, Oracle was arguing that Google had stolen code that was under copyright. Because Google integrated that code into its Android OS, and Google was arguing that it was under fair use. This idea that APIs fall under fair use, generally speaking, because that's the way in which software is kind of cobbled together. And so this went through one court where Google won, and then on appeal, Oracle won, and then on Supreme Court, which is obviously the final one. There was two key questions that were asked. One, is it? I can't remember the question. The first one is, does it fall under fair use? And then the other one is, does it fall? I think it has something to do with, does it fall under copyright law? I apologize. You can go read the ruling. But generally speaking, they argued for, I guess a lot of developers are saying sanity, which basically says that Google did not, this falls under fair use relative to Google. So Google essentially kind of won in its argument.
Yeah,
So,
I guess it has to be like certain type of code too. Is it like some proprietary like IP code, or is it, this was just like the basic routine to like pull stuff off disk and like just pull file off disk or something?
I'm not interested enough. I'll be honest. I'm not interested enough to find out. I just thought it was the whole premise of the idea was that you can't. The whole premise was, I think a lot of developers latched onto, is like, wait, you're saying APIs are copyright? Like, that's how we integrate our software. If that is under copyright law and I have to seek permission, all these integrations are going to not happen, basically. So.
Yep. And it's like it was 11,000 lines of code, but it was only 0.4% of the relevant code in the app. Well,
Java's huge. I mean, Java's a big code base. But I think Google did this intentionally to facilitate development on Android. There's a Supreme Court ruling.
Let's go through this, John.
No, I'm not going to read this. But generally speaking, it looks like it fell under fair use. And that makes sense, I think. It wasn't a unanimous decision. It was 6-2. And I think that there were some interesting questions raised in dissent around this. I'm not a lawyer, but I just found it interesting that people were making points about that. So there you go.
So I mentioned earlier I did some electronics classes in college, and
there's a breadboard right there. I like it.
Got a very underused degree for it, but this came across as an ad. And I was like, ads normally don't impress me much.
Sure.
But this ad came up and I was like, whoa, this is cool. Because I love like augmented reality. I think it's a really just appreciated tech right now. And it's going to just take over in a big way eventually. This whole like looking at it through your phone is just kind of like the baby step of like the whole thing. And HoloLens is going to be the real deal. But anyway, I digress. This ad came up. And I think the ad is basically this video. And I was like, This is so cool. I just geeked out to this so hard. So.
Wait a minute. You need a specialized board. Okay, so it doesn't do any. It isn't looking at an arbitrary breadboard and figuring this stuff out. Okay.
Yeah, it probably has special markers maybe on it.
I would think
tell it how to find.
Yeah, I would imagine it needs this board in order to.
Even if it does, this is just.
I'm already crapping all over it. That's a bad idea,
yeah.
but I don't.
I don't care if it's proprietary parts. This is just phenomenal. It's great. Data visualization.
Sorry, I should get off my bandwagon. I sound like a grumpy old man. I know. I apologize. Sorry. This is cool.
I mean, it gives you kind of like the step-by-step tutorial on how to build things, and it gives you animations on what's happening inside the circuit. And not everybody visualizes stuff like this. I mean, I've got a pretty imaginative mind, and I can visualize things pretty well. But not everybody has that. They just did a study, I think it was last couple of years ago, that was talking about how people visualize things like they can see like an apple differently at different like resolutions and stuff in their mind and whatnot. So not everybody sees things the same way when they're thinking about how these circuits work. And I think this God, they are coming on loud here. This kind of opens things up to a whole other level, though. This is really cool. So I thought that was neat, just for the sheer usage of AR and what it's capable of. And I love how it's cutting through like the diagram and giving you a 3D perspective on what's inside there. Yeah, just too neat. I love the training aspect of AR, and this seems to be a pretty cool
Bread,
platform.
breadboards. I have PTSD from breadboards because I worked on a project while in university for 6 months, and I didn't realize this until about 3 months in. I was creating this integrated circuit, and I didn't realize that the breadboard I had been given was like an old breadboard that had been used for years and years, and the metal plate mesh that underpinned it wasn't fully contacting the underpin. So if you press down on the breadboard, the circuit would work. And I didn't know that for like the first 3 months because I would get this odd behavior. I'm like, so I'd have to move my whole like circuit over to another part of the breadboard because I thought there was a faulty pin somewhere, not realizing that actually the whole undercarriage is like getting disconnected. And so, yeah, breadboards are, yeah, I wish they were better, but yeah. And I've had resistors blow up on me, and it's funny. You just see it go boop, like this and stuff, and yeah, it's just hilarious. Like those breadboards are fun.
Yeah, so I mean, this is the first time I'm looking at this. I'm not trying to advocate for this company or anything.
Sure,
but
sure. No, it's good. It's a good idea.
For $200, I mean, it's got 80 lessons in it inside that AR mobile app, and it comes with the stuff for $200.
So you get a breadboard, you get parts, you get the lessons, you get a multimeter, which is awesome. Multimeters are like when you take the prongs and you determine the current and all that. Start guide. Yeah, this looks great. Great.
I honestly don't know how they're doing it. I mean, when I did this, it cost me $22,000.
What? Seriously?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
for tech school. So,
Okay.
yeah, this really burns because I would have loved to have had something like this instead of
Sure.
hacking my calculator and cheating my way through classes that were too expensive.
Yeah, just to give people, to complete the story, we were building a circuit using a 6501 CPU, which ran at 1 megahertz. So we got it to move. I got it to move a robotic arm, and at the end of the project, all the arm was supposed to pick up a ball and put it into a cup. All it did was the arm just went like that. That's all it did.
I remember I made a game that was, it took two breadboards that were kind of hidden away, and it was they would never let you do this in today's atmosphere, but it was a plastic explosive bomb, like mock-up,
Okay.
and it would count down, and then you had a set of buttons that you'd press to solve math problems.
Oh,
And you had to get so many solved before the counter reached zero.
Sure.
And then if it reached zero, it'd just like light up red.
Okay.
But, you know, today I'd probably be on the news. Like, they'd probably have me locked up.
Yeah, you could say it's like a MacGruber thing, you know, MacGyver, MacGruber,
Yeah.
etc.
So just kind of topping off the AR talk here. Tim Cook says he wants to use AR to make conversations better. I don't know exactly what he meant by conversations. There's some speculation in all of this.
Yeah,
So,
I think it's like those thought bubbles you see. It like if you're wearing glasses, it would be a thing that would appear, and like if I was talking to you, it'd be like, oh Ed, how are the kids? How's the wife? You know, I hear it's their birthday coming up, and like someone's like, this is amazing. This guy remembers everything. I'm like, no, it's just because you got AR working for you. This is the equivalent of having a handler. So you see these people in like C-level executives and dignitaries and heads of state usually have handlers, and they're like walking behind them. They're like, this is Joe Smith. He's the minister of finance for whatever country, you know, sort of thing. And his wife's name is Barbara, and he has 2 kids. And so the president walks up, shakes hands, like, how's Barbara doing? And like that makes you more personable. This is kind of the equivalent of that.
So this says, you and I are having a great conversation, but it'd be even better if we augmented our discussion with charts and other things.
Not with charts.
You know,
Nope. Sorry.
That's exactly what you and I need between us, John, is
Yeah.
a chart.
Suddenly I'm looking up beyond your head, and I'm like, yeah, those data points look. This guy's crazy. What's this guy talking about? You know?
There's a pie chart over my face, and it's 50% is crazy, 10% is normal. I don't know if that's what they meant. But
what you want are bullet points of key bullet points. You see this in contact apps. You want to surface out the information you see typically in a contact app, where it's like important dates, important notes, wife's name, spouse's name, children's dates, etc. That's what you want.
Yeah, I mean, I should walk up to you, John, and it should recognize your face and say,
sure,
John Bristowe, Australian
44,
guy.
curmudgeon.
Likes long walks on the beach and hockey.
On the beach, that's right. Yeah, that's right. You got it. So, yeah.
That's all I've got, John. That's my set for the week.
Sweet.
So, no, AR is very cool. I think we'll see more of that. I think the Tim Cook thing was less impactful than the little circuit thing I showed. I probably should have switched those around. But
I think people understand I think people are understanding the motivations for AR. They are typically used in environments where humans are. The bridge that has to be crossed, I believe, is people's acceptance of it. Meaning, if I had this problem when Google Glass came first out. I always said to myself, if someone walks up to me with Google Glass and there's a camera right in the middle pointing right at my face, now I'm really careful about what I'm saying because I don't want people recording my conversation. Not that I say things like all the time that get me in trouble or anything. It was just I just feel
canceled, my friend.
Well, it'd just be like, it would just be like this. If you and I are talking and I suddenly pull out my phone, like, yeah, that's great, Ed. Yeah, so how are the wife and kids? Huh? It's like, it's the same sort of deal. So I always had a problem with it. So I think the bridge that has to be crossed relative to AR is people's acceptance of it. And I think that adding cameras and listening devices is, I think, a natural evolution of the technology, but I think it's best served in an AR context for annotation only. Like a read-only environment where, and it can't be capturing. It has to just be reading to the output for the receiver, meaning like just bullet points. That's all it needs to supplement people's environment. But the second you start taking in the environment through a video lens or a microphone, that's when it becomes a problem for me, So, yeah. Anyway,
I think a really cool place for this will be in vehicles. Like showing you directions on the road in front of you.
Yep.
Stuff like that would be really cool. So I think
the
the
like to be able
part
to.
Of it's neat.
Yeah, like you see those displays. They're kind of like HUD displays where they laser draw onto the windshield in front of you. People freak.
Aztec Consulting here is saying he tried that with Google Glass and people freaked. So he's that guy, John. He's that guy you're talking about.
Well, I'm that guy. I don't like it when people walk up to me and they've got a camera pointed right in my face, So I think that I think you're right. I think HUD displays is the first step, which is general acceptance of HUD for people is going to be a good thing, I think, for a lot of people because it's just causing you. The equivalent of this is you've got a note-taking device, whether it's a piece of paper or an iPhone. You're just looking down on it for your notes and doing a lookup. This is just short-circuiting that sort of process, basically. And so if a policeman were to use this, or a military person, or say a firefighter or an ambulance person were to have glasses, and I could do a quick sort of look up on someone and get all their telemetry, on my, like reminding me, hey, remember this person's allergic to penicillin, don't give them penicillin, I think that would be a good thing.
Yeah, it's definitely I think it's going to be one of the next big things when it finally comes out. I think we have some sort of device that we can use like glasses. I think the phones will eventually just go away, to be honest.
Maybe. The limiting factor is battery technology. That's really the problem we have right now is batteries. Battery technology has not evolved in the last 60, 70 years beyond, lithium ion is pretty good, but it's like the battery packs for these things are so big. And that's where it gets. That's the problem right now. Is the batteries? I think.
Well, in the short term, the phone might be on us, but it might stay in our pocket a lot more if we had some sort of glasses. I mean, you already have eyewear on, so I mean, if you
the contact lens implant.
But if you have some sunglass type technology that's light and it has a plug that goes to your phone or something that may not be so bad. You run around the airport, you can see what time your flight's leaving without having to pull this germ-infested thing out of your pocket all the time. It might be
it's the Mission Impossible scenario without the battery pack. Because if the reality is, it would be like dun, 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 and you would put like Tom Cruise would put on the glasses, but then you'd have this like massive brick attached to his back, and he'd be like running through with this this cacophony of technology with bricks and power, all kind of like he looked like one of those street buskers on the corner of with the drum on his back and the cymbal between his legs. Basically, we've got to get rid of the batteries if we can, or shrink them down in some way. It's just
You're
really
going back to the DevRel backpack analogy.
Sure. Yeah,
that's what the batteries are like.
Yep.
All right, John. Everybody have a good week. It's only Monday. Can you believe that? I've been off for a week, so it feels like the longest day ever.
Don't eat too much chocolate. Keep it easy on keep it on the DL for the chocolate consumption.
Yep, and have a great week. We'll be here all week with awesome content on Code It Live. So we've got TJ Vantel's got some extra shows this week. We've got Alyssa Nicole doing her thing. We got VR shows. We got Sam Basu doing a couple podcasts and other shows that he does with Xamarin. So I mean, it's a full week on this channel.
Sweet.
Don't go far. Just hit subscribe and I gotta get the kids on the show. They can do that part for me. They're like, click
Sure.
subscribe. Follow me.
It would be cool if you just had conversations with kids about technology, and it would all just be like, "This sucks."
I think it was John Papa though. It's like he said his phone is full of his kid. Click subscribe, and it's like she doesn't even have a YouTube channel. It's just videos on my phone. Like
oh yeah, kids
like
are all about
their,
yeah. My sons are like that. Like, how many subscribers does he
dialogue.
have? I'm like, who cares? Doesn't matter.
But anyway, the point is, click subscribe and follow us and all that good nonsense, and we'll be here to entertain you.
Cool.
Just grind the organ, the monkey will dance. And we'll see you the rest of the week, folks. Take care.